Ethan Blackwood thought he was the smartest man in the room when he handed his wife, Isabel, divorce papers in front of his entire snobby family. He called her a gold digger and a burden, mocking her silence and her simple clothes. He thought he was upgrading by leaving her for a younger, flashy heiress. He was wrong. Dead wrong. Ethan didn't know that the burden he was discarding was actually the silent founder of Viridian Global, the very conglomerate trying to buy his family's failing business. He didn't just sign divorce papers, he signed his own death warrant. The chandeliers inside the grand ballroom of the Plaza Hotel were blinding, casting a harsh, glittering light over the Blackwood family's annual charity gala. For most, this was a night of celebration. For Isabel, it was her annual scheduled humiliation. She stood near the buffet table, sipping a glass of sparkling water, trying to blend into the velvet curtains. She wore a simple, charcoal-grey sheath dress. To the untrained eye, it looked plain, perhaps something bought off the rack at a department store. To a trained eye, the hand-stitching and the heavy, luxurious drape of the vicuña wool would have screamed bespoke. But the Blackwoods were not trained. They were simply loud. "Look at her," a voice sneered from a nearby table. Isabel didn't need to turn around to know it was Beatrice Blackwood, her mother-in-law. Ethan is up there on stage, accepting an award for innovation in real estate, and his wife looks like she just came from a funeral. It's embarrassing. "She tries, Mother," a younger voice giggled. That was Tiffany, the daughter of a rival developer. Tiffany had been hanging around Ethan a lot lately. She was wearing a dress that cost more than a mid-sized sedan and was currently clinging to Beatrice's arm like a favored pet. Isabel took another sip of water. She checked her watch, a vintage Patek Philippe that looked battered but was worth more than the entire catering budget of this party. It was 8:05 p.m. She had a conference call with the board of directors in Tokyo in 2 hours. She just needed to survive this night. Ethan descended from the stage, the applause washing over him. He was handsome in a conventional way, square jaw, expensive haircut, and a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. He made a beeline for his mother and Tiffany, bypassing Isabel completely. Isabel sighed and walked over. "Congratulations, Ethan. The speech was good." Ethan turned, his smile vanishing instantly. He looked her up and down with a familiar expression of disdain. "Good? That's all you have to say, Isabel? I just secured the contract for the Hudson Yards expansion, and you say it was good?" "It's a significant achievement," Isabel corrected herself, her voice calm. "I'm happy for you." "Happy?" Beatrice scoffed, stepping between them. "If you were happy, you'd dress the part. You look like a governess. Ethan needs a partner, Isabel. A power couple image. Look at Tiffany. She's wearing the new season Versace. That is how a Blackwood wife should look." Isabel glanced at Tiffany. "It's a lovely dress. A bit bright for autumn, but lovely." Tiffany bristled. "It's called Electric Cerulean, and it's exclusive." "Isabel wouldn't know about exclusivity," Ethan said, checking his phone. "She thinks luxury is buying the extra-large detergent at the supermarket." The small circle of socialites around them laughed. It was a sharp, cruel sound. Isabel felt the familiar sting, but she pushed it down. She had been dealing with this for 3 years. She had married Ethan because she thought he was kind. She thought he was different from the sharks she dealt with in the boardroom every day. She had wanted a simple life, a place where she didn't have to be the CEO. She had hidden her identity to be loved for herself. Instead, she found that without her title, she was treated like furniture. "I need to speak to you," Ethan said, grabbing Isabel's elbow a little too roughly. "In the library. Now." Isabel followed him away from the noise of the party into the quiet, mahogany-lined library of the hotel suite the family had rented. Ethan closed the door and turned to her. He didn't look angry. He looked smug. "I can't do this anymore, Isabel," he said, adjusting his cufflinks. "Do what, Ethan?" "This. Us. You are dragging me down." He walked over to the desk and picked up a manila envelope. He tossed it onto the coffee table. It slid across the polished wood and stopped right in front of her. "I'm filing for divorce." Isabel looked at the envelope. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She felt a strange, cold clarity. "Divorce? Because I don't dress well enough? It's not just the clothes, Isabel. It's everything." Ethan paced the room. "I'm a rising star. I'm going to be the CEO of Blackwood Enterprises when my father retires next month. I need a wife who brings connections, money, and status to the table. You're nobody. You're an orphan from Chicago with a library degree. You bring nothing." Isabel raised an eyebrow. "I bring stability. I manage the household. I manage your personal finances." "You pinch pennies," Ethan shouted. "I'm sick of it. I've met someone else, someone who understands my world." "Tiffany," Isabel stated flatly. "Yes, Tiffany," Ethan said, puffing out his chest. "Her father owns Kincaid Construction. A marriage between us would merge two empires. It's a strategic move, Isabel. Something you wouldn't understand." Isabel reached for the envelope. "So, this is a business decision?" "Everything is business," Ethan sneered. "My lawyer has drawn up the papers, since we signed a prenup. Thank God my mother insisted on that. You get nothing. No alimony, no shares. You leave with what you came with." Isabel looked at him. Really looked at him. She saw greed, arrogance, and profound stupidity. He thought he was merging with Kincaid Construction. He didn't know that Kincaid Construction was currently leveraged to the hilt and secretly being bailed out by a private equity firm. Her private equity firm. "Are you sure about this, Ethan?" Isabel asked softly. "Once I sign this, there is no going back. You are cutting ties completely." "That's the point," Ethan laughed. "Just sign it, Isabel. Don't make a scene. Don't beg." Isabel picked up a pen from the desk. It was a cheap promotional ballpoint with the hotel's logo. Fitting. "I won't beg," she said. She opened the folder, flipped to the signature page, and signed her name with a flourish. Isabel Sterling. She closed the folder. "I'll have my things moved out of the penthouse by tomorrow morning." Ethan looked disappointed. He wanted tears. He wanted her to fall to her knees. Her calm demeanor unnerved him. "Good. Great. And don't expect a reference if you apply for a housekeeping job." Isabel stood up, smoothing her dress. "I won't need a reference, Ethan. Good luck with the merger. I have a feeling you're going to be very surprised by how the market reacts." She walked to the door, her head held high. As she grasped the handle, Ethan called out one last time, "You're pathetic, Isabel. You'll regret losing me every day of your miserable life." Isabel didn't look back. She walked out of the library, through the ballroom, and straight out the front doors of the plaza. The cold New York air hit her face. It felt like freedom. She pulled her phone from her clutch. It was a secure, encrypted device. She dialed a number. "This is Sterling," she said, her voice dropping an octave, becoming the tone that made grown men in boardrooms sweat. "Initiate Phase 2 on Blackwood Enterprises, and tell the legal team to finalize the acquisition of Kincaid Construction. I want it done by Monday." "Yes, Ms. Sterling," the voice on the other end replied instantly. "And the transport?" "I'm outside. Bring the car." 30 seconds later, a cavalcade of 3 black Cadillac Escalades screeched to a halt in front of the plaza. 4 bodyguards in tactical suits jumped out, forming a perimeter. One opened the back door of the middle vehicle. The doorman at the plaza, who had watched Isabel wait for taxis for 3 years, dropped his jaw. Isabel slid into the leather seat. She was done playing the housewife. The Queen had returned to her throne. The morning after the divorce papers were signed, Ethan Blackwood woke up feeling like a king. The sunlight streamed into the penthouse master bedroom, a room Isabel had decorated with understated taste, which he planned to redo in gold and marble immediately. He reached over to the other side of the bed. Empty. Good. He picked up his phone and dialed Tiffany. "It's done, babe," he said, grinning. "She's gone, signed the papers without a fight." Finally, Tiffany's voice purred on the other end. "Now we can stop hiding. Daddy is going to be so happy. He's been waiting for us to make it official before discussing the merger details." "I'm heading to the office now," Ethan said. "Dad is calling an emergency board meeting. He says there's been some unusual movement in the stock this morning, probably just the market reacting to the rumors of our union. They know Blackwood and Kincaid are about to become a superpower." Ethan showered, dressed in his best Italian suit, and drove his Porsche to the Blackwood Tower in downtown Manhattan. He breezed past the reception, ignoring the security guards who looked unusually tense. When he entered the boardroom, the atmosphere was heavy. His father, Richard Blackwood, was pacing at the head of the table. Beatrice was there too, looking pale. The entire board of directors was seated, murmuring in hushed tones. "Ethan," Richard barked, "sit down. We have a crisis." "Crisis?" Ethan laughed, taking his seat. "Dad, relax. If the stock is fluctuating, it's just volatility. Once I announce the engagement to Tiffany Kincaid, we'll stabilize." "It's not volatility, you idiot!" Richard slammed a file onto the table. "It's a hostile takeover." Ethan froze. "What? Who?" "We don't know." The CFO, a sweaty man named Henderson, stammered. "It's a shell company, Aurora Holdings. They've been quietly buying up non-voting shares for months. This morning at 9 a.m. sharp, they executed a massive buy order on the open market. They triggered a clause in our debt agreements. They own 51% of the controlling interest as of 10 minutes ago." "That's impossible," Ethan said, his face draining of color. "We're a family company. Who has that kind of liquid capital? That's billions of dollars." "We're trying to find out," Richard growled. "They've called for an immediate meeting. The new majority owner is sending a representative in." He checked his watch. 5 minutes. The doors to the boardroom opened, but it wasn't a lawyer in a suit who walked in. It was a woman. She was flanked by 6 people, 4 lawyers and 2 assistants carrying laptops. She wore a white suit that looked like it was cut from diamonds and ice. Her heels clicked rhythmically on the marble floor. She wore large sunglasses. "Who are you?" Richard demanded. "You can't just barge in here." The woman didn't answer. She walked to the head of the table. Richard, intimidated by her sheer presence, instinctively stepped back. She sat down in the chairman's chair, his chair. She signaled to one of her lawyers. "Gentlemen," the lawyer announced, "this is the new owner and chairwoman of the board for Blackwood Enterprises. She represents Aurora Holdings, a subsidiary of Viridian Global." Viridian Global. The room gasped. Viridian was the white whale, the most powerful, secretive conglomerate in the Western Hemisphere. They owned shipping lines, tech firms, pharmaceuticals, and now, apparently, Blackwood Enterprises. "I don't care who she represents," Ethan stood up, trying to regain control. "Get out of my father's chair." The woman slowly reached up and removed her sunglasses. She folded them and placed them on the table. Then she looked up. Ethan's knees buckled. Beatrice let out a strangled gasp. Richard looked like he was having a stroke. It was Isabel. But it wasn't the Isabel they knew. This wasn't the woman who wore grey wool and cooked dinner. Her hair was slicked back, sharp and modern. Her makeup was flawless. Her eyes were cold, hard steel. "Hello, Ethan," Isabel said. Her voice wasn't soft anymore. It commanded the room. "Isabel?" Ethan whispered. What are you doing?" "I'm calling the meeting to order," she said calmly. She opened a leather portfolio. "First item on the agenda, the immediate restructuring of executive leadership." You own Viridian?" Beatrice shrieked. "You? But you used coupons for the grocery store." Isabel looked at her former mother-in-law with a faint, amused smile. "I enjoy finding value, Beatrice. Just because I have $50 billion doesn't mean I should waste $2 on milk. That's why I have $50 billion. And you," she gestured to the financial reports on the table, "are bankrupt." "Bankrupt?" Richard sputtered. "We are not bankrupt." "You are now," Isabel said. "I bought your debt, all of it, and I'm calling it in. Unless, of course, you agree to my terms." "What terms?" Ethan asked, his voice trembling. He looked at the woman he had divorced less than 24 hours ago, the woman he had called a nobody. "First," Isabel said, tapping her pen on the table. "Richard, you're fired, effective immediately. Your mismanagement has run this company into the ground." Richard turned purple. "You can't do that. I own 51%. I can do whatever I want. Security, please escort Mr. Blackwood out." Two of the guards stepped forward. Richard looked at his son, pleading for help, but Ethan was paralyzed. He watched his father be dragged out of the room he had ruled for 40 years. "Second," Isabel continued, turning her gaze to Ethan. "The merger with Kincaid Construction." "Yes," Ethan said, grasping at a straw. "The Kincaid deal. Tiffany, her father will stop this. He has resources." Isabel laughed. It was a dark, rich sound. "Oh, Ethan, you really don't do your homework, do you? I acquired Kincaid Construction this morning at 8:30 a.m. Tiffany's father was desperate to sell to avoid jail time for tax fraud. I own them, too." Ethan slumped into his chair. You own everything." "Everything that matters," Isabel said. "And as for you, Ethan..." She paused, letting the silence stretch until it was suffocating. "I'm not going to fire you," she said. Ethan looked up, hope flickering in his eyes. "You're not?" "No," Isabel smiled. "That would be too easy. You said you wanted to be a part of a power couple. You wanted to work hard. Good. I'm demoting you. You are now the junior assistant to the regional manager of our sanitation division." "Sanitation?" Ethan choked. "Garbage? You want me to manage garbage trucks?" "No, not manage them," Isabel corrected him. "You'll be working in the dispatch office, in the basement. Minimum wage. No benefits. If you quit, I will enforce the non-compete clause in your contract that prevents you from working in any related industry for 10 years. You'll be unemployable." Ethan stared at her. "Why are you doing this?" "Because," Isabel leaned forward, her eyes locking onto his, "you wanted a wife who brought connections and power to the table. I'm showing you exactly what that looks like." She stood up. The meeting was adjourned. "Ethan, you're late for your shift." Ethan Blackwood had never been in a basement in his life, unless it was a wine cellar in Tuscany. Now he sat in a windowless, fluorescent-lit room that smelled of stale coffee and industrial cleaner. His desk was metal, rusted at the corners. His phone, a company-issued landline, wouldn't stop ringing. "Dispatch! Where is truck 402? A voice screamed in his ear. I don't know," Ethan stammered, staring at the complex grid of monitors he hadn't been trained to use. "I think it's on 5th Avenue. It's stuck in traffic because you didn't route it, you moron. That's a fine from the city. That's coming out of your paycheck." The line went dead. Ethan slammed the receiver down, his hands shaking. He looked at his bespoke Italian suit, now wrinkled and stained with toner ink from the broken printer. It had been 3 days. 3 days of hell. He checked his personal cell phone. 3 missed calls from his mother, Beatrice, who was currently staying at a Motel 6 because Isabel had foreclosed on the family estate that morning. And 1 text from Tiffany. "Meet me at the Oak Room. Now." Ethan grabbed his jacket and ran for the elevator. He didn't care if he got fired. Actually, he couldn't get fired. Isabel's lawyers had made it clear that if he walked out, he'd be sued for breach of contract and liable for millions in damages caused by his father's negligence. He was a prisoner. He arrived at the Oak Room, a dimly lit, exclusive bar near Central Park. He spotted Tiffany in a booth in the back. She wasn't wearing electric cerulean today. She was wearing black, and her eyes were puffy. "Tiffany," Ethan breathed, sliding into the booth. "Thank God, I need you. We need to figure this out. My lawyer says—" "Shut up, Ethan," Tiffany hissed. She didn't look at him with adoration anymore. She looked at him with pure, unadulterated loathing. "Babe? Don't babe me," she snapped, slamming a glass of martini onto the table. "Do you know where my father is? He's in Switzerland, fleeing indictment, because your ex-wife handed over his cooked books to the SEC the moment she bought his company." "I didn't know," Ethan pleaded. "She tricked us both. You lived with her for 3 years. Tiffany's voice rose, attracting stares. "You lived with the Shark of Wall Street, and you thought she was a librarian. You are the most incompetent man I have ever met. I was blinded by love. You were blinded by your own ego," she spat. "And now I'm broke. My trust fund is frozen. My credit cards are declined. I have nothing." Ethan reached for her hand, but she pulled away. "We have each other. We can rebuild." Tiffany laughed, a cold, dry sound. "Rebuild with what? Your minimum wage salary from the sanitation department?" "No, Ethan, I'm not here to hold your hand. I'm here because I found something. Digging through my father's old files he kept on competitors." She reached into her designer bag, which she would probably have to sell on eBay tomorrow, and pulled out a grainy photograph. She slid it across the table. Ethan looked at it. It showed Isabel standing in a park. She was wearing sunglasses and a trench coat, but she wasn't alone. She was holding the hand of a small boy. The boy looked to be about 4 or 5 years old. He had dark, curly hair and piercing blue eyes. "Who is that?" Ethan asked, confused. "My father's private investigator took this 6 months ago," Tiffany whispered. "He was looking for dirt on Viridian Global's CEO, unaware it was your wife. He couldn't confirm her identity then, so he buried it. But look at the boy, Ethan." Ethan squinted. The boy. The dark curls. The blue eyes. Ethan had blue eyes. A chill ran down his spine. "Is that—" "It's her son," Tiffany said, her eyes gleaming with malice. "His name is Leo. She has him tucked away at a private boarding school in Connecticut, the St. Jude's Academy for the Gifted." "She has a son?" Ethan felt the room spin. "But we were married." "She never said—" "I told her I didn't want kids yet. She was on birth control." "Clearly she lied," Tiffany smirked. "Or maybe he isn't yours. Maybe she had him before, or during. Does it matter? This is the chink in her armor, Ethan. The Iron Lady of Viridian Global has a secret weakness." "What are you suggesting?" "I'm suggesting we use him." Tiffany leaned in. "The media doesn't know about the boy. Imagine the scandal." billionaire CEO his secret love child. Or worse, we find out who the father is. If it's you, you have custody rights. You can leverage him for a settlement, a massive one. Ethan looked at the photo. A child, a son he never knew existed. If the boy was his, Isabel had stolen his rights as a father. Anger, hot and righteous, replaced his fear. She kept my son from me, Ethan said, his jaw tightening. Exactly, Tiffany purred, seeing she had him hooked. We're going to get him back, Ethan, and we're going to make her pay. Just then, a shadow fell over their table. A touching sentiment, a deep baritone voice rumbled. But amateurs like you will only get crushed if you go after Isabel Sterling alone. Ethan and Tiffany looked up. Standing there was a man who looked like he had been carved out of granite. He was tall, wearing a suit that cost more than the Blackwood penthouse. He had silver fox hair and a scar running through his left eyebrow. Ethan recognized him instantly. Everyone in the business world did. Grant Caldwell, Ethan gasped. Grant Caldwell was the CEO of Apex Industries, the only rival that came close to Viridian Global's power. He was known as the Butcher of Wall Street. May I join you? Grant didn't wait for an answer. He pulled up a chair and sat down, signaling the waiter for a scotch. I couldn't help but overhear. You want to take down Isabel? I want to take down Viridian. It seems our interests align. Why would you help us? Tiffany asked, eyeing him suspiciously. Because Isabel Sterling humiliated me in Tokyo 5 years ago, Grant said, his eyes darkening. She stole a microchip patent right out from under my nose. I've been waiting for the right moment to strike. And you two, you have the weapon I need. He tapped the photo of the boy. The boy, Ethan said. Not just the boy, Grant corrected. The narrative, the grieving father, denied his son by the cold, heartless corporate witch. The public will eat her alive. Her stock will tank. And when it does, I'll be there to buy Viridian for pennies on the dollar. Grant pulled a checkbook from his pocket. He wrote a number and slid it to Tiffany. This is for your expenses and legal fees, Grant said. Tiffany looked at the check. Her eyes widened. It was for $5 million. Deal, Tiffany said instantly, grabbing the check. Grant turned to Ethan. And you, Mr. Blackwood, are you ready to play the role of the century? Ethan looked at the photo of Leo. He didn't feel love for the child. He felt ownership. He felt a way out of the basement. I'm ready, Ethan said. Isabel Sterling stood in the penthouse office of the Viridian Tower, looking out over the New York skyline. From here, the city looked like a circuit board, energy flowing in predictable patterns. But her life was anything but predictable. Ms. Sterling, her assistant, a sharp young man named David, buzzed in on the intercom. The acquisition of Kincaid Construction is finalized. We're liquidating their assets to pay off the creditors. Good, Isabel said. Make sure the employees getting laid off are offered severance packages and retraining within our logistics division. I want to destroy the Kincaids, not the workers. Understood. Also, you have a visitor. He says it's personal. He's not on the schedule, but security says he has high-level clearance. Who is it? Grant Caldwell. Isabel froze. Grant. She hadn't seen him since the Tokyo summit. He was dangerous, smart, ruthless, and entirely lacking in morals. Send him in, she said, steeling herself. Moments later, the double doors opened. Grant Caldwell strolled in like he owned the building. Isabel, he smiled, a predatory expression. You look tired, heavy as the head that wears the crown and all that. Cut the pleasantries, Grant. Isabel walked to her desk and sat down, asserting dominance. Why are you here? If you're here to bid on the Blackwood scraps, you're too late. I've already picked the carcass clean. "Oh, I'm not here for the scraps," Grant chuckled, sitting on the edge of her desk, a calculated invasion of her personal space. "I'm here to offer you a lifeline. I don't need saving. Don't you?" Grant pulled a folded newspaper from his jacket pocket. It wasn't today's paper. It was a mock-up, a proof for tomorrow's front page of the New York Chronicle, a paper Grant secretly owned. Isabel looked at the headline. Her blood ran cold. "The Billionaire's Secret Prisoner. How Isabel Sterling Hid Her Son from His Father." Below the headline was the photo of her and Leo in the park, and next to it, a photo of Ethan, looking disheveled and tearful, with the caption, "Ethan Blackwood. I just want to hold my boy." "You wouldn't?" Isabel whispered. The air left her lungs. Leo, her sweet, innocent Leo. "I would," Grant said softly. "The story runs tomorrow morning. Unless what?" Isabel stood up, her hands clenched into fists. "Unless you sell me the semiconductor division of Viridian, at a fair market price, of course." Isabel laughed bitterly. "The semiconductor division is worth $40 billion. It's the heart of our future tech." "And your son is the heart of your life," Grant countered. "Think about it, Isabel. The custody battle, the media circus. Ethan will sue for full custody. With the narrative we've crafted, that you abandoned your husband to hide a child, a judge might just give it to him. Do you want Ethan Blackwood raising that boy? Or worse, Tiffany Kincaid?" The thought made Isabel nauseous. Ethan didn't care about children. He had told her once that if she ever got pregnant, she'd have to choose between the baby and him. That was why she had hidden Leo. Leo wasn't Ethan's biological son. She had adopted Leo as a single parent 2 years before meeting Ethan, but she had never finalized the adoption papers publicly to protect Leo's privacy. Technically, during their marriage, Leo was her dependent. If Ethan played the wronged stepfather card in this state, he could drag Leo into a legal hellhole for years. "Leo isn't his," Isabel said icily. "He's adopted. Ethan knows nothing about him." "The public doesn't know that," Grant shrugged. "And Ethan is willing to lie. He's willing to say he thought the boy was his. He's willing to say you stole him. By the time the truth comes out, the damage will be done. Leo's face will be on every tabloid." Isabel looked at Grant with pure hatred. "You are a monster." "I'm a businessman," Grant stood up. "You have until midnight, Isabel. Sell the division or I will destroy your family." He turned and walked to the door. "Oh, and tell Leo the boarding school looks lovely this time of year. I have photographers camped outside the gates right now." Grant left. Isabel sank into a chair. She was trembling, not from fear but from rage. They had crossed the line. They had brought her son into this. She picked up her phone. She didn't call her lawyers. She didn't call the police. She dialed a number that had no name stored in her contacts. It was a number she hadn't used in 10 years. "Hello?" a voice answered. It was rough, tired, and sounded like it belonged to a man who had seen too much war. "Lucas," Isabel said, her voice steady. "It's Isabel." There was a long silence on the other end. "Isabel, it's been a long time. I need a favor," she said. "A big one. Name it. I need you to extract someone from St. Jude's Academy, immediately. And I need you to find dirt on Grant Caldwell, the kind of dirt that doesn't just put him in jail, but gets him buried under it." "Who is the target for extraction?" Lucas asked. "My son," Isabel said. "You have a son?" Lucas sounded surprised. "Does he know about me?" "No," Isabel said, looking at the photo of Leo on her desk. "But he's about to meet his real father." St. Jude's Academy was a fortress disguised as a school, nestled in the rolling hills of Connecticut. But to Lucas, the ghost, Thorne, Fortresses were just puzzles waiting to be solved. Lucas sat in an unmarked black sedan a mile down the road. He watched the feed from a drone he'd deployed, circling high above the campus. He saw them, 3 vans with tinted windows parked near the east gate. Paparazzi? No. They were too disciplined. Grant Caldwell's private security, waiting to snatch the boy the moment he stepped outside for recess. Lucas checked his weapon, a habit from his days in special ops, though he prayed he wouldn't need it today. He looked at the photo Isabel had sent him. Leo. The boy had Isabel's smile, but he had Lucas's eyes. The realization had hit him like a physical blow when Isabel told him over the phone. He's yours, Lucas. I hid him because 5 years ago, you were a target for every cartel in Mexico. I couldn't let them find him. Lucas felt a surge of protectiveness, so fierce it burned. He shifted the car into gear. He wasn't going to sneak in. He was going to walk in. He drove up to the main gate. The guard stepped out. ID, please. Lucas flashed a badge. It wasn't the police. It was a diplomatic security credential, high level and terrifyingly vague. I'm here for Leo Sterling. Emergency extraction authorized by the mother. The guard hesitated. We have orders not to release him to anyone but Ms. Sterling. There are reporters outside. I'm not a reporter, Lucas said, his voice like gravel. Open the gate, or I drive through it. The guard saw the look in Lucas's eyes and opened the gate. 10 minutes later, Lucas walked out of the administration building with a confused but curious Leo holding his hand. Are you a spy? Leo asked, looking up at the scarred giant. Something like that, Lucas said, his voice softening. I'm an old friend of your mum's. We're going to play a game called Invisible. We need to get past the bad guys at the gate without them seeing us. Lucas didn't take the main exit. He led Leo through the kitchens, out the loading dock, and into the woods bordering the property. The paparazzi at the front gate never saw them. 2 hours later, they were in a safe house in Brooklyn, a reinforced loft Isabel owned under a shell company. Isabel was pacing when they walked in. She froze when she saw them, the 2 men in her life. One small, one large, both with the same messy dark curls. Mum! Leo ran to her. Isabel scooped him up, burying her face in his neck. She cried silently for a minute before composing herself. She looked at Lucas over Leo's shoulder. Thank you, she whispered. He's safe, Lucas said, leaning against the doorframe. He looked tired but alert. My team has the perimeter. Grant's goons are still watching the school. They have no idea he's gone. Isabel put Leo down and handed him an iPad. Go play in the bedroom, honey. Mummy needs to talk to the giant man. When Leo was gone, the air in the room shifted. Why didn't you tell me? Lucas asked quietly. You know why, Isabel replied, walking to the window to check the blinds. 5 years ago, there was a price on your head. If they knew you had a son, they would have used him to get to you. I had to leave you to save him. And now? Now Grant Caldwell is trying to do exactly what the cartels wanted to do, Isabel said, her voice hardening. He wants to use Leo to break me, to steal my company. So, what's the plan? Lucas cracked his knuckles. I can pay Grant a visit. He won't walk for a year. No. Isabel turned, her eyes blazing. Violence is too good for him. I want to destroy him. I want to strip him of his reputation, his money, and his freedom. I want him to feel what it's like to be powerless. She walked over to a table where a laptop was set up. Grant wants a show, she said. He scheduled a press conference for tomorrow morning at the Waldorf. He expects me to announce the sale of my semiconductor division. He expects a broken woman. Isabel smiled, and it was a terrifying sight. He forgot one thing. I recorded our conversation in my office. Lucas raised an eyebrow. In New York. Two-party consent laws. It's inadmissible in court. I don't need it for court, Isabel said. I need it for the court of public opinion. And as for the legal side, that's where you come in. Me? Grant's Aurora Holdings, the shell company he used to buy Blackwood debt, didn't just appear. He moved money through offshore accounts in the Caymans. Illegal accounts. You used to track terrorist financing, Lucas. Can you trace Grant's money trail? Lucas grinned. It was a wolfish grin. Give me a laptop and 6 hours. I'll find every dime he's ever stolen. Good, Isabel said, because tomorrow morning, Ethan, Tiffany, and Grant are going to find out that they didn't trap me. She looked at the closed bedroom door where her son was playing. They trapped themselves in a cage with a lioness. The grand ballroom at the Waldorf Astoria was packed. Every major news outlet was there. Cameras flashed incessantly. At the center of the stage sat the victors. Grant Caldwell looked regal in a navy suit, projecting the image of a benevolent industry titan. Tiffany Kincaid sat next to him, wearing a modest black dress, dabbing at dry eyes with a tissue. She was playing the supportive girlfriend perfectly. And Ethan Blackwood. He sat in the middle, looking solemn. He had rehearsed his lines all night. I just want my son back. I forgive Isabel, but a child needs a father. The moderator stepped up to the podium. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming. We are here to address the disturbing allegations regarding Viridian Global's CEO, Isabel Sterling, and the future of the Blackwood estate. Grant leaned into his microphone. We didn't want to make this public, he lied smoothly. But when we discovered that Ms. Sterling had been concealing a child, my business partner's child, we felt a moral obligation to step in. We are also announcing that Viridian Global has agreed to sell key assets to Apex Industries to settle impending lawsuits. The crowd murmured. It was a hostile takeover disguised as a moral crusade. Ethan? Grant prompted. Ethan cleared his throat. He looked directly into the camera. Isabel, if you're watching, please, just bring Leo home. We can work this out. I love him. You love him? A voice rang out from the back of the room. The heavy double door swung open. The cameras swiveled. Isabel Sterling walked in. She wasn't wearing a suit of armor. She was wearing a blood-red dress that stood out like a flame against the grey room. She walked down the center aisle, her head high. But she wasn't alone. Walking beside her was Lucas Thorne. He was massive, wearing a black tactical suit that made the hotel security look like mall cops. He scanned the room with a predator's gaze. Isabel, Grant said, his smile faltering slightly. We didn't expect you. Clearly, Isabel said, climbing the stairs to the stage. She ignored the empty chair they offered her and stood at the podium, pushing the moderator aside. You want a story? Isabel addressed the reporters. I'll give you a story. Isabel, don't make a scene, Ethan hissed. Just sign the papers and I'll let you see the kid on weekends. Isabel looked at Ethan with pity. Ethan, you never asked for a paternity test, did you? I didn't need one. We were married. We were, Isabel nodded. But Leo is 5 years old. We were married for 3 years. Do the math, Ethan. Ethan froze. The room went silent. He counted on his fingers. Wait. But Leo isn't your son, Isabel announced clearly. I adopted Leo before I even met you, and his biological father. She gestured to Lucas. Is standing right here. Lucas stepped forward. He looked at Ethan. You said you wanted to hold your boy? Come and take him. Ethan shrank back into his chair. The grieving father narrative evaporated in seconds. So what? Tiffany shrieked, standing up. You still lied. You hid a child. You're unfit. I hid him to protect him, Isabel said. Not from the world, but from people like Grant Caldwell. Isabel pulled a USB drive from her clutch and plugged it into the presentation laptop on the podium. "Grant told you he was here out of moral obligation," Isabel asked the crowd. "Listen to this." She hit play. Grant's voice boomed over the speakers, clear as day. The narrative, the grieving father. The public will eat her alive. I'll be there to buy Viridian for pennies on the dollar. Sell the division, or I will destroy your family. The room erupted. Reporters were shouting questions. Flashes were blinding. Grant's face turned white. "This is manipulated. It's AI. Turn it off." "It's not AI," Isabel said calmly, "and neither is this." She clicked a button. The screen behind her changed. It wasn't a photo of a child. It was a spreadsheet, a complex web of bank transfers. "Lucas!" Isabel yielded the floor. Lucas leaned into the mic. His voice was deep and terrifying. "What you are looking at is the financial trail of Aurora Holdings. Notice the transfers from the Cayman Islands. Those funds originated from the sanctioned accounts of the Volkov Syndicate. Grant Caldwell didn't just buy Blackwood debt. He laundered money for the Russian mob to do it. Lies! Grant screamed, standing up and knocking his chair over. "You have no proof." "Actually," a new voice spoke from the side entrance. A team of agents in FBI windbreakers marched into the room. The lead agent held up a warrant. "Grant Caldwell," the agent announced. "We have a warrant for your arrest for money laundering, wire fraud, and conspiracy to commit extortion. We received the dossier from Mr. Thorne this morning. It's very comprehensive." Grant looked for an exit, but Lucas stepped in his path. Grant stopped, looking up at the man who was a head taller than him. "Now," Lucas whispered, low enough that only Grant could hear. "Who is the amateur?" The agents cuffed Grant and dragged him off the stage. The cameras captured every second of his disgrace. Isabel turned to Ethan and Tiffany. They were sitting alone on the stage, the spotlight harsh and unforgiving. "And you two," Isabel said. "You wanted to be a power couple? You wanted fame?" She gestured to the cameras. "Smile. You're trending." The collapse of the conspirators didn't happen in a vacuum. It was a public spectacle, a slow-motion train wreck that the entire world watched with bated breath. The fallout was swift, brutal, and absolute, dismantling their lives with the surgical precision Isabel Sterling was famous for. Grant Caldwell, the man who once believed he could buy and sell human beings like stocks, was the first to fall. His processing at the Federal Detention Center in Brooklyn was a far cry from the executive suites he was accustomed to. Stripped of his bespoke Italian suit and forced into a coarse orange jumpsuit that smelled of industrial detergent, Grant looked less like a titan of industry and more like a frightened, aging man. The bail hearing was a massacre. The evidence Lucas Thorne had unearthed was catastrophic. The financial trail linking Aurora Holdings to the Volkov Syndicate was irrefutable. Grant's high-priced lawyers, usually sharks in the courtroom, sat in stunned silence as the prosecution laid out the terabytes of data. Wire fraud, money laundering, conspiracy to commit extortion, and violations of the RICO Act. The judge, a stern woman who had lost her pension in a scheme similar to Grant's years prior, denied bail immediately, citing him as an extreme flight risk. Grant's assets, his penthouses in Manhattan and London, his yacht, his private jet, and his entire art collection were frozen and seized by the Department of Justice. But the true sting came 2 days later. In a solitary confinement cell, Grant watched the small television mounted on the wall. The news ticker at the bottom of the screen announced that the board of Apex Industries had not only fired him, but was suing him for breach of fiduciary duty. He watched as the Apex logo was stripped from the building he had built. He would spend the rest of his life in a 6x8 concrete box, trading stories of past glories that no one believed. his legacy reduced to a cautionary tale in business ethics textbooks. Tiffany Kincaid's descent was perhaps even more humiliating because it was so public. She didn't go to prison, but she was sentenced to a social death that, for her, was worse. The $5 million check from Grant, the money she had already mentally spent on a comeback tour, was flagged as proceeds of crime and confiscated by the FBI. With her father on the run and Kincaid Construction liquidated by Viridian Global to pay off creditors, Tiffany was left with nothing. The eviction from her Upper East Side apartment was live-streamed by a neighbor she had once insulted. Tiffany stood on the sidewalk, clutching a single Louis Vuitton bag, while marshals padlocked the doors. She tried to sell her designer wardrobe, only to find that friends in the industry had blacklisted her. No auction house would touch her items, fearing legal entanglements with the ongoing investigation. 6 months later, the woman who once sneered at waitresses found herself in a cramped, fluorescent-lit break room of a budget dental clinic in New Jersey. She was the new receptionist. Tiffany, the office manager, a woman younger than her, barked from the hallway. "You filed the Anderson charts wrong again. Fix it or you're out. And clean the coffee pot, it's filthy." Tiffany grit her teeth, her manicured nails a thing of the past, replaced by chipped polish she couldn't afford to fix. She sat at the front desk, answering phones for near minimum wage. During her lunch break, she ate a cold sandwich and scrolled through social media on a cracked phone screen. She saw a post from Vogue. The new era of philanthropy, featuring a glowing Isabel Sterling. Tiffany felt a tear slide down her cheek, not of sorrow, but of bitter, acidic regret. She had bet on the wrong horse, and now she was walking the stables. And then there was Ethan. Ethan Blackwood's fall was the most personal. He had been the prince who thought he was a king, only to find out he was merely the jester. The day after the press conference, he was fired from his sanitation dispatch job for gross misconduct and public disrepute. But that was the least of his worries. He applied for jobs. Any jobs. He applied for sales positions, mid-level management, even entry-level data entry. But in the digital age, a Google search is the first step of any background check. Every recruiter saw the same thing. The viral video of him on stage, lying about a child who wasn't his, followed by the revelation of his incompetence. He wasn't just unemployed, he was unemployable. He was a liability. His friends, the sycophants who drank his champagne and laughed at his jokes, ghosted him. When he called his mother, Beatrice, the line was disconnected. She had moved in with a distant cousin in Ohio and refused to speak to the son who had lost the family fortune. 3 months later, the harsh New York winter began to set in. Ethan sat on a park bench in Central Park, the very same park where he used to jog in $1,000 sneakers. Now, he wore a coat he had bought from a thrift store, which was 2 sizes too big and smelled of mothballs. His shoes were splitting at the soles, letting the freezing dampness seep into his socks. He hadn't eaten a hot meal in 2 days. He sat there, shivering, staring at the skyline. He could see the Viridian Tower in the distance, piercing the clouds, a monument to the woman he had called a burden. A hush fell over the street as a sleek, midnight black Rolls-Royce Phantom glided to the curb near his bench. It was a vehicle of immense power and elegance. Ethan looked up, his heart hammering a desperate rhythm against his ribs. A foolish spark of hope ignited in his chest. Maybe, he thought. Maybe she remembers the good times. Maybe she's here to offer me a lifeline, a job, anything. The tinted back window lowered smoothly. Inside, the car was warm, bathed in the soft glow of amber reading lights. Isabel sat there. She looked breathtaking, wearing a coat of cream cashmere. her face serene and unburdened. Next to her was Lucas, looking every bit the protector, his arm resting casually on the seat behind her. Between them sat Leo, pointing out the window at a squirrel, laughing that pure, infectious laugh of a happy child. They looked like a portrait of everything Ethan had wanted, but was too selfish to build. Isabel turned her head. Her eyes met Ethan's. Ethan braced himself for anger. He expected her to gloat, to shout, to spit on him. He prepared himself to beg. But Isabel didn't speak. She didn't smile. She didn't frown. Her expression was one of complete and utter indifference. It was the look one gives a stranger or a piece of scenery. It was the look of a woman who had not only moved on, but had ascended to a plane of existence where Ethan Blackwood simply did not matter. He wasn't an enemy anymore. He was a ghost. She turned away, refocusing her attention on Lucas, who whispered something in her ear that made her smile. A genuine, radiant smile that Ethan had never earned. The window rolled up, sealing the warmth away from him. The Rolls-Royce pulled away, the tires splashing a wave of freezing, dirty slush onto the sidewalk, soaking Ethan's legs. He didn't even flinch. The physical cold was nothing compared to the chill in his soul. Ethan reached into his pocket. His fingers brushed against a piece of plastic. It was the cheap promotional pen from the Plaza Hotel, the pen he had used to sign the divorce papers, the pen that had signed away his life. He pulled it out and stared at it. It was cracked, the ink dried up, just like him. With a shuddering breath, he tossed the pen into a nearby trash can. It clattered against the metal rim and fell into the darkness. Ethan stood up, his joints aching, and began the long, trudging walk toward the homeless shelter on 3rd Avenue. He had told Isabel he wanted a life of drama. He had told her he wanted to be a main character. He got his wish. He was the villain in a tragedy of his own making, doomed to wander the stage long after the applause had died. And that is the story of how Ethan Blackwood signed away a fortune and a future because he was blinded by arrogance. He thought he was discarding a burden, but he was throwing away a diamond. In the end, karma didn't just knock on his door, it kicked it down. Isabel didn't just survive, she thrived, finding not only justice, but the true love and family she had always deserved with Lucas and Leo. It's a powerful reminder that when you dig a grave for someone else, you better dig too. Ethan and his family learned the hard way that true worth isn't in what you wear or who your parents are. It's in your character. And theirs was bankrupt long before their bank accounts were. If you enjoyed this story of justice and twists, please smash that like button. It really helps the channel. Share this video with someone who needs to see some hard karma in action, and don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss a new story.